Hey guys, in this month's Historical Fiction 101, I'm going to be sharing with you some recommendations for books that take place in Australia. So, as I just said, I'm going to be sharing with you guys some book recommendations for some books that take place in the wonderful land of Australia. We all love Australia, don't we? They have some of the best freaking animals, let's be real. And you guys, I feel like I need to apologize about this list of books because I feel like I just was having such a difficult time not finding books, because I definitely found a good chunk of books. There's lots of books out there written about Australia, you know, like historical fiction that takes place in Australia and whatnot. But yeah, at the same time, I was just sitting thinking, this doesn't feel very diverse, if that makes sense. I'm not really sure how to kind of say that. I just felt like there wasn't much diversity in like types of characters and like even just some of the plot lines, if that makes sense, you know, because as I was kind of like reading the plot synopsis for a lot of these books, I was like, there just doesn't seem to be very much diversity, however you want to kind of take that, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I went, whenever I do these book recommendation videos, I always go, because Goodreads has a category. If you go to one of their top menus and you put the menu down, they have something called Listopia, where you can type in just some sort of category and there might be a book list of that thing, you know. So yeah, like for me, I went to Listopia and I just typed in historical fiction Australia, you know, and there was, lo and behold, a category full of historical fiction in Australia, you know. And that's how I a lot of times make these lists. So if there's not something on that list, I mean, I'm kind of ignorant to it, you know. So yeah, as always with these videos, if there's a book that I'm just not aware of that takes place in Australia, like I said, historical fiction, let me know, because I would definitely like to add it to this list, you know, make other people aware of it and whatnot, because Australia has such a beautiful, rich history, you know. It's such a rich, beautiful land as well, and I think a very diverse people and whatnot. And yeah, I just don't feel like my list of books is sharing that in any sort of way. So yeah, if you guys definitely have some suggestions and recommendations that could be added to this list, definitely let me be aware of that. So yeah, I'm going to get going with this list. I'm going to share with you guys 10 books that I thought were interesting. And as always, I'm going to be reading off of my computer the Goodreads synopsises. So if you want to learn more about any of these books, go to Goodreads. First up, The Naturalist Daughter by Tia Cooper. I think that's how her name's pronounced. And it looks like this whole book is taking place in New South Wales, it looks like. So yes, starting off in 1808, Rose Winton, I think is how it's pronounced. Rose Winton wants nothing more than to work with her father, eminent naturalist Charles Winton, on his groundbreaking study of the platypus. Not only does she love him with all her heart, but the discoveries they have made could turn the scientific world on its head. When Charles is unable to make the long sea journey to present his findings to the prestigious Royal Society in England, Rose must venture forth in his stead. What she discovers there will change the lives of future generations. So then, yeah, like I said, that takes place in 1808. Then we move on into 1909, but the same place. Tamsin Allen has been given a mission: travel to the Hunter Valley and retrieve an old sketchbook of debatable value, gifted to the public library by a recluse. But when she gets there, she finds there is more to the book than meets the eye, and more than one interested party. Shaw Everdeen, a young antiquarian, bookseller, and lawyer, seems to have his own agenda when it comes to the book, and Tamsin. In an attempt to discover the book's true provenance, Tamsin decides to work with him. The deeper they delve, the more intricate the mystery becomes. As the lives of two women a century apart converge, discoveries rise up from the past and reach into the future with irreparable, I can't pronounce that, consequences. The War Bride by Pamela Hart, January 1920. Young Englishwoman Margaret Dalton is full of excitement as she arrives in Sydney to begin a new life in the warm, golden land of Australia. She leaves behind the horrors of World War I and can't wait to see her husband, Frank, after 2 years of separation. But when Margaret's ship docks, Frank isn't there to greet her, and Margaret is informed that he already has a wife. What? Oh no. Devastated, Margaret must make a new life for herself in this strange city, but she soon falls in love with its vibrant harbor, sweeping ocean, and clean sea breezes. A growing friendship with Army Sergeant Tom McBride gives her a steady person to rely on. But just as Margaret and Tom begin to grow closer, news arrives that Frank may not have abandoned her. What? Will Margaret's life be thrown upside down once again? And where should her loyalties lie? With the new life or with the new? The Mystery Woman by Belinda Alexandra. Looks like this takes place in the 1950s in Australia. Rebecca Wood takes the role as postmistress in a sleepy seaside town, desperate for anonymity. She wants to be anonymous, you know what I'm trying to say, after a scandal in Sydney. But she is confronted almost at once by a disturbing discovery. Her predecessor committed suicide. Oh my god. To add to her worries, her hopes for a quiet life are soon threatened by the attentions of the dashing local doctor, the unsettling presence of a violent whaling captain, and a corrupt Shire secretary, as well as the watchful eyes of the town's gossips. Yet, in spite of herself, she is drawn to the enigmatic resident of the house on the clifftop, rumored to have been a Nazi spy. Good God. Against the backdrop of the turbulent sea, Rebecca is soon caught up in the dangerous mysteries that life behind Shipwreck Bay's respectable net curtains. The Girl in the Painting, and this is another book by Taya Cooper, and this one is Australia, 1906. Orphan Jane Piper is 9 years old when philanthropist siblings Michael and Elizabeth Quinn take her into their home to further her schooling. The Quinns are no strangers to hardship. Having arrived in Australia as penniless immigrants, they now care for others as lost as they once were. Despite Jane's mysterious past, her remarkable aptitude for mathematics takes her far over the next 7 years, and her relationship with Elizabeth and Michael flourishes as she plays an increasingly prominent part in their business. But when Elizabeth reacts in terror to an exhibition at the local gallery, Jane realizes no one knows Elizabeth after all, not even Elizabeth herself. As the past and present converge and Elizabeth's grasp on reality loosens, Jane sets out to unravel her story before it's too late. From the gritty reality of the Australian goldfields to the grand institutions of Sydney, this compelling novel presents a mystery that spans continents and decades as both women finally discover a place to call home. The Women's Pages by Victoria Perman. And this is taking place in Sydney in 1945. The war is over, and so are the jobs and freedoms of tens of thousands of Australian women. The armaments factories are making washing machines instead of bullets, and war correspondent Tilly Galloway has hung up her uniform and been forced to work on the women's pages of her newspaper, the only job available to her, where she struggles to write advice on fashion and makeup. As Sydney swells with returning servicemen and the city bustles back to post-war life, Tilly finds her world as anything but normal. As she desperately waits for word of her prisoner-of-war husband, she begins to research stories about the lives of the underpaid and overworked women who live in her own city, those whose war service has been overlooked, the freedom and independence of their war lives lost to them. Meanwhile, Tilly's waterside worker father is on strike, and her best friend Mary is struggling to cope with the stranger her own husband has become since being liberated from Changi, a broken man. I'm not sure, that sentence was a little weird. As strikes rip the country apart and the news from abroad causes despair, matters build to a heart-rending crescendo. Tilly realizes that for her, the war may have ended, but the fight is just beginning. And next up is a classic, and this is The Thornbirds by Colleen McCullough. I'm aware of this in title only. I've never read it, and I think there's been like TV adaptations of it over the years, but yeah, I only know about it through name only, and I know that it's a classic. The Thornbirds is a robust romantic saga of a singular family, the Clearys. It begins in the early part of this century, when Paddy Cleary moves his wife Fiona and their 7 children to Drogheda, the vast Australian sheep station owned by his autocratic and childless older sister. And it ends more than half a century later, when the only survivor of the third generation, the brilliant actress Justine O'Neill, sets a course of life and love halfway around the world from her roots. The central figures in this enthralling story are the indomitable Maggie, the only Cleary daughter, and the one man she truly loves, the stunningly handsome and ambitious priest Ralph. Ralph's course moves him a long way indeed, from a remote outback parish to the halls of the Vatican, and Maggie's, except for a brief and miserable marriage elsewhere, is fixed to the Drogheda that is part of her bones. But distance does not dim their feelings, though it shapes their lives. Next up, this is like considered another classic as well, and this is Picnic at Hanging Rock by Joan Lindsay. And I know this was recently made into some sort of TV miniseries adaptation as well. Natalie Dormer was in it, and I really wanted to watch this and I never got around to it. But yeah, this book takes place on Valentine's Day, apparently. Valentine's Day 1900 in rural Australia. 19 girls and their 2 school mistresses from exclusive Appleyard College leave for a picnic at the brooding Hanging Rock. Some of the group fail to return. Murder? Accident? Supernatural happenings? What is the explanation for these bizarre disappearances? And that's all this plot has. Good God. But it sounds great though. Australia, 1900, an all-girls school, it sounds like. They all disappear under mysterious circumstances. This sounds pretty great. I gotta pick this up. The Light Between Oceans by M.L. Stedman. This is a book that I have read, and I did really, really enjoy it. This takes place in Australia, 1926. After 4 harrowing years of fighting on the Western Front, Tom Sherborne returns home to take a job as the lighthouse keeper on Janus Rock, nearly half a day's journey from the coast. To this isolated island, where the supply boat comes once a season and shore leaves are granted every other year at best, Tom brings a young, bold, and loving wife, Isabel. Years later, after 2 miscarriages and 1 stillbirth, the grieving Isabel hears a baby's cries on the wind. A boat has washed up on shore carrying a dead man and a living baby. Tom, whose records as a lighthouse keeper are meticulous and whose moral principles have withstood a horrific war, wants to report the man and infant immediately. But Isabel has taken the tiny baby to her breast. Against Tom's judgment, they claim her as their own and name her Lucy. When she is 2, Tom and Isabel return to the mainland and are reminded that there are other people in the world. Their choice has devastated one of them. I love this book. It was very interesting, definitely very interesting, and just a lot of like morals and ethics and whatnot to it. You know, if you found a missing baby, what's the right thing that you should do? Should you raise it on your own or go find where it should properly belong? You know, I love this book. It was really good. Next up, True History of the Kelly Gang by Peter Carey. In True History of the Kelly Gang, the legendary Ned Kelly speaks for himself, scribbling his narrative on errant scraps of paper in semi-illiterate but magically descriptive prose as he flees from the police. To his pursuers, Kelly is nothing but a monstrous criminal, a thief, and a murderer. To his own people, the lowly class of ordinary Australians, the bushranger is a hero, defying the authority of the English to direct their lives. Indentured by his bootlegger mother to a famous horse thief who was also her lover, Ned saw his first prison cell at 15, and by the age of 26 had become the most wanted man in the wild colony of Victoria, taking over whole towns and defying the law until he was finally captured and hanged. Here is a classic outlaw tale made alive by the skill of a great novelist. So yeah, this is definitely based off of a real person, the real Ned Kelly, but like this is being told from his point of view and whatnot. And wasn't this made like into some sort of movie years ago? Or am I making that up? Wasn't like Heath Ledger or something in it? I can't remember, you guys. I swear something about this, the name Ned Kelly is kind of, it's sparking something in my brain, like I watched something like that, and for some reason I'm thinking about Heath Ledger. Am I wrong? And my last recommendation here is Cocaine Blues, the first book in the Friend Fisher series by Carrie Greenwood. Friend leaves the tedium of English high society for Melbourne, Australia, and never looks back. The London season is in full fling at the end of the 1920s, but the Honourable Friend Fisher, she of the green-grey eyes, garters and outfits that should not be sprung suddenly on those of nervous dispositions, is rapidly tiring of the tedium of arranging flowers, making polite conversation with retired colonels, and dancing with weak-chinned men. Instead, Friend decides it might be rather amusing to try her hand at being a lady detective in Melbourne, Australia. Almost immediately from the time she books into the Windsor Hotel, Friend is embroiled in mystery. Poisoned wives, cocaine smuggling rings, corrupt cops, and communism, not to mention erotic encounters with the beautiful Russian dancer, Sasha de Lys, until her adventure reaches its steamy end in the Turkish baths of Little Lonsdale Street. This sounds great. I know there's I think the BBC has done some sort of TV series of this. I think it's still on, actually. It's called the Miss Fisher, what does it say here? I'm trying to, Miss Fisher's Murder Mysteries. Yeah. I've always kind of wanted to watch that series. I'm not sure if like PBS has gotten it over the years and I've just not been aware of it. But yeah, that sounds cool. So you guys, that is it for all of my recommendations that take place in the land down under in Australia, you guys. In the comments below, as I already mentioned, if there's any other books that take place in Australia, specifically historical fiction, please let me know. So any of these books have you guys loved or you hated, just let me know. So that's going to be it for this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you like this video, you may like these other videos. Bye guys.